Hi guys, this is Albert Michon for TorahExchange.com. Today we're going to be learning about family dynamics in Bereshit, mostly in Chayei, but we're going to take other parakim from Bereshit. So the first thing I want you guys to do is take out your Tanakh, JPS preferably, extra points, but if you have Art Scroll, I'll allow that as well. And I want you to open up to Perek Tet Zayin, which is 16. Okay? So just a little bit of an introduction to this parak. This is the parak where Avram and Sarai, before they changed their names, they don't have children. So Sarai tells Avram to go and basically marry this maidservant, Hagar, and she'll have a kid, and that's how they will build up their household, through Hagar. Anyway, as we go through the parak, things aren't working out between Sarai and Hagar. There seems to be and a lot of different commentaries about what's happening. Either Sarai is mistreating Hagar, or Hagar is not being respectful to Sarai. At the end of the day, what matters is that Avram is told by Sarai to send Hagar out of his household into the desert. So let's read a little bit from that parak. Okay. So, Vayimsa'am, Vayomer, this is Pasuk 6. ויאמר אברהם אל שרי הנה שפחתך בידך עשי לה הטוב בעינייך ותעניה שרי ותברח מפניה. So Avram says to Sarai, do what you want with this woman, and presumably she's mistreated, and so Hagar runs away, and she runs into the desert, and a malach finds her, and whether that's literal or figurative, that's a different class. And she basically tells Hagar, return. And you might wonder, why would you ever return? You just finished running away from somebody that was mistreating you. But he says, if you return, I will greatly increase your offspring. You'll become a great nation. You'll bear a son. He will be a ruler. He will be a leader among the men. And it'll be well worth it for you to go back. And the place that this is called, at this well, where Hagar, meets this angel and then returns, is called Be'er Lechai Ro'i. And I want you to keep that in mind. Okay? Keep that in mind. The place where that is called is Be'er Lechai Ro'i, which means the well where the living one appeared to me. Presumably the well where the angel appeared to me. Okay. That's the sort of the prologue. That's sort of the backstory, right? Now pretend you don't know that. I want you to fast forward to Parshat Chayei Sarah. And Parshat Chayei Sarah is actually a very easy one. There's 3 parakim. There's the first one, the famous one. One of the famous ones is 20. Let's see what I have here. 24, Chaf Daled, where Avram does the famous bargaining with Ephron for Marat HaMachpelah. Then the second one is the famous one, with Eliezer. Even though Eliezer is not mentioned, but we assume it's Eliezer trying to find Yitzchak a wife. The third parak of Chayei Sarah is extremely less well known. It's a little obscure. This is the one where Abraham actually remarries after Hagar, after Sarai, and he marries this woman called Keturah. And we don't really know much about who Keturah is, based on just the text. And we know they have children, and we know that later, he sends those kids away, and that's that, seemingly. Sort of out of the blue. It doesn't seem to connect to anything. So let's explore that a little bit. The first thing to do before we explore that is to go to Perek Chaf Aleph. Okay? Now this is sort of a similar story to the prologue, in which Yitzchak and Yishmael are actually sort of teenagers now, and they're growing up together. And of course Yishmael's older, and Sarah sees something that she doesn't like from Yishmael. The pasuk says that Yishmael was misachek with Yitzchak. And Rashi, on one hand, claims that this is anywhere from avodah zarah, or rechitza, like murder, or even something sexual. And this is based on different uses of misachek. Even Ezra takes a little bit more of a moderate approach and says, well, they're just playing, they're kids, that's what kids do, they play. And Ramban, as Ramban is wont to do, sort of takes the middle approach. Says, well, I don't think he was killing anyone or avodah zarah, but I'm sure it was something more than playing. So he says, Yishmael is being disrespectful. Sort of similar to what people would say about Hagar the first time around. Right now it's the son. Not that he's maybe not doing anything wrong, but he's just not, he's being disrespectful. Okay, so what happens? Sarah tells Avraham to send them out, right? We've seen that before. And Avraham doesn't want to. And Avraham says, no. Avraham says, let's see what Avraham says. ותאמר לאברהם, גרש האמה הזאת ואת בנה, כי לא יירש בן האמה הזאת עם בני עם יצחק. She says, send them away. I don't need them for anything, right? They're not going to inherit you. What was the whole reason I brought Hagar in the first place? To build someone build a household that can inherit you. But now we have Yitzchak. We don't really need them. וירא הדבר מאוד בעיני אברהם על אודות בנו. And Abraham, this distresses him a lot. He doesn't want to send away his son because after all, Ishmael is Abraham's son. And actually God intervenes and God tells Abraham, no, you have to listen to Sarah, she's right, send them away. So interestingly enough, Abraham is told by Sarah, garesh, sort of throw out, like what we call the Spanish Inquisition for Sephardic Jews, we call it gerusha, misfarad, which is expulsion. But the language that's used here is actually, let's find it, vayishlachea, he sends them away. And he actually sends them with food and water. So it's not, you could tell that he sort of really didn't want to do this because he's not even doing it as harshly as was commanded. But he sends them into the desert, a man and a woman, a woman and a child with food and water. That's not really much. Lechem v'chemat mayim. It's not really gonna keep them alive. Okay. So let's see what happens. Again, similar story. Hagar, in the desert, this time with her son. And the waters run out, and the food's run out, and she doesn't know what to do. So she just prays, she sets Ishmael away, sets him down, and walks away from her son and says, just let the boy die. I don't want to see him die. And this is the famous midrash of we judge people ba'asher husham as they are in that moment, which is why they end up getting saved. Hashem brings an angel similar to last time, and says, fear not. I made a promise to you. God's going to make him a great nation. Don't worry. He brings water, and they're saved again. Okay? Again, in the desert, with water involved. We don't know exactly where the place is, but very similar to the first story. You see a lot of different parallels between that and the first story. Okay, now let's go a little bit forward. We know Chayei Sarah is right after the Akedah, which was a very traumatic experience for Abraham, for Yitzchak, for Sarah. We know the famous midrash that Sarah actually died after hearing that Abraham had sacrificed Yitzchak. And the whole question of Akedat Yitzchak is really looked at by both rabbis and non-Jewish philosophers as sort of the ultimate test of faith. What happens when you have morality, what seems to be the right thing to do, don't sacrifice your son, and God telling you to do something, right? What do you do? Isn't God always moral? Which one do you follow? That's a discussion for more exploration, but a lot has been written on that. So anyway, this is obviously a very traumatic experience for everybody. So Abraham and Yitzchak, we all know, go to the Akedah. He's tied down. Yitzchak is tied down. Abraham sends forward his hand to sacrifice him. An angel comes, tells him no, don't sacrifice him, untie him, and then that's where we all know the story up until. But what happens afterwards? Interestingly enough, in the following parakim, when they're talking about Sarah and we're talking about burying Sarah and mourning Sarah, and we have to find Yitzchak's son. Yitzchak isn't mentioned anywhere. It's only Abraham that seems to be doing anything. You might ask, Abraham's mourning Sarah, why isn't Yitzchak mourning Sarah? Abraham is talking to some servant, which we assume is Eliezer, about finding Yitzchak's son. Shouldn't he be mentioned anywhere in one place? And we see, I'm looking, nope, can't seem to find it. Nope, not here. That's very odd, right? Abraham and Yitzchak came together up the mountain, and they definitely did not return together back down. So I'd like to pause for a second here and say that, my way of looking at Tanakh is I try and, you try and look at the characters in Tanakh as complex characters not just archetypal versions of good, but complex people that we can relate to that did a lot of good and did some things wrong, and that's where the value lies, in that you can learn from what was done wrong. And it's sort of not taking away to say that there were problems, but sort of adding to Tanakh and its relevance to your life. Right? What's the point of having a role model that you can't relate to? Sort of like that. I just wanted to say that before we go forward. Okay. Now we go forward to the end of Perek Chafei. So I lied. Yitzchak is somewhere in the last two Perakim, but he's at all the way at the end of the second one. So he's there. And guess where he's coming back? Let's read it. This is Pasuk 63. Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh. Right? That's the famous Pasuk. Lasuach basadeh, and the Gemara says that's where we get mincha from. Okay. Lifnot arev. Vayisa enav vayar v'hine gemalim ba'im. Oh, look, camels. Vatisa Rivka tenea vaterei Yitzchak vayipol me'al hagama. And it's Rivka coming, right? It's the first time the lovers are meeting. It's beautiful. Vatomer ela even mi haish halazeh haolech basadeh leklatenu vayomer haeved hu adoni vatikach hatzai vatichkas. And she says, "Who's that man? That's my master, as in the person you're going to marry." Right? Very romantic. But before we go into this whole beautiful story of Rivka meeting Yitzchak, where Yitzchak is lasuach basadeh, where is he coming from? Right? Look at Pasuk 62. V'Yitzchak ba mibo be'er lechai ro'i v'hu yoshev be'eretz hanegev. So Yitzchak is not coming back from Be'er Sheba or Hebron, two of the places Avraham Avinu lived throughout his life. He's coming back from, of all places in the entire Eretz Israel he could be, because he's not with Avraham. He's coming back from Be'er Lechai Ro'i, the same place where Hagar definitely ended up the first time that she was sent out by Sarah and Avraham, and possibly, I think, the second time also she was sent out with Yishmael that time. So what is Yitzchak doing in Be'er Lechai Ro'i? Maybe I could understand if Hagar is there or Ishmael is there, but what's Yitzchak doing there? Right? What does he have to do with it? Okay, now pause. Let's have a climactic pause so we can get to the answer. I think the answer lies in Perek 25, right? Chafei, where we're going to see what exactly is going on, and Keturah is sort of going to be the figure that ties it all together. The first thing that we see is as the couple is meeting Yitzchak and Rivka, it says, let me find it, Vaikach et Rivka, Yitzchak takes Rivka, Vatihi lo leisha, and takes her as a wife, Vayehaveha, and he loves her, Vayinachem Yitzchak achare imo, and Yitzchak finds comfort after his mother's death. Right? What's that phrase doing there? We know he loves her. But what does Rivka have to do with Sarah? What's the connection? What's the familial connection? We already know that the dynamics of the family at this point, we can tell, weren't good. Right? You have Abraham and Sarah fighting over Hagar. Abraham doesn't want to send her away. Sarah wants to send her away. You have Abraham doing it anyway. And you can imagine how Hagar and Ishmael felt about that. You have Sarah and Hagar not getting along. You have, who knows what it did to Yitzchak and Ishmael's relationship. You have Abraham and Yitzchak's relationship, one seemingly of love, right? It was said that Yitzchak did everything Abraham told him, but then they don't come back down together. So there's obviously alienation. We see a lot of frayed endings. Just at the beginning of, the chain that's supposed to be our nation, it already seems to be breaking apart. And I think this is the key perek in bringing them back together and allowing us to actually exist as Bnei Israel. We have Yitzchak coming back from Be'er Lechai Ro'i. Then Avraham marries Keturah. And Rashi actually says that Keturah is Hagar. Right? Why? Because it's, I don't have the exact Rashi in front of me, but it says that her actions were as pleasant as the Ketoret, so she was called Keturah. So it would seem that Keturah, or Hagar, was able to, make up for past disrespectful actions, or sort of change whatever she had to work on, right? Because name changes in the Torah are a big thing. Even from Avram to Avraham and Sarai to Sarah is a big deal. So you can imagine from Hagar to Keturah, can imagine, how much a person changes from that. And as we read through, they have kids, and it goes through genealogy. And what ends up happening with these kids is that there's a lot of them, first of all. And if you remember the Malach's promise to Hagar is you're going to have a lot of kids, so you can sort of check that one off. And the next one is that he sends them away. Let's find it. 1 second. Okay. לבני הפילגשים אשר לאברהם נתן אברהם מתנות וישלחם מעל יצחק בנו בעודנו חי קדמה אל ארץ קדם. Abraham doesn't send Hagar or Keturah's sons and daughters this time with just, lechem and mayim, a little bread, a little water. He sends them away, right? But he sends them, with entire, a whole inheritance out of Eretz Yisrael. Because even though Yitzchak is going to be the one to continue the line that's going to inherit Eretz Yisrael, doesn't mean that you're going to leave everybody else with zero, right? There's a level of parental responsibility, and this time Abraham fulfills it, right? Whereas last time he knew it was wrong, legaresh. So it doesn't say that he expelled them. It says that he sent them. He didn't fulfill it as far as he could. He sent them with bread and water to a desert. This time he makes sure that their future is going to be secure, like a good parent should, right? And together, they live out their old age, and now Abraham, it seems now we get to Abraham's, the passing away of Abraham. And it says, Vayigva vayamot Abraham besera tova zaken vasavea vayasef el amav. Abraham dies in good age, sort of fulfilled. He seems like he, took care of what he had to take care of. Seems like the dynamics of the family are repaired. Right? And now as the final point, let's just see where it is. Where does Yitzchak go after? Where does Yitzchak go after he's done? After they bury Abraham? After his stepbrothers, I guess, or the sons of Hagar go away? He goes back to Be'er L'chai Ro'i. Vayeshev Yitzchak im Be'er L'chai Ro'i. That's where he goes back. So it seems that the touch point of Yitzchak's life sort of centers around this well, where even though he at first didn't have anything to do with, it became the touchstone for repairing family relationships, right? We had Hagar and Yishmael come there. We had Abraham and Sarai send them there. We had them come back from the trauma. Imagine you're Yitzchak. You just went through a very traumatic place. Where do you go? You go towards reconciliation. You go towards hope. You go towards a better future. And you don't just wallow in your problems. You try and make things better. You say something wrong was done to me. I don't know why. I don't want to debate why, how. Is it bad? Is it good? Something crazy just happened to me. Do I want to just never see my father again, or do I need to get help? Right? He goes to Be'er L'chai Ro'i. He marries. Vayinachem Yitzchak. He's comforted, and then he takes a proper, forward action of getting Keturah and Abraham back together, and Abraham then realizes and makes amends for what he didn't do the first time. Shabbat Shalom.